Hi, and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today is June 10th, 2022, and we are welcoming back Jamie Zimmermann, who was a guest in 2019. Like most everything, things look different for Jamie than they did in 2019. She's now living in San Francisco as an integrated producer at Venables Bell Partners and has expanded the types of projects she works on beyond art producing. This includes broadcast, digital content, and experiential. Her main clients are a Reebok and Cardi B collaboration and 3M. And as a fun fact, she spent her time in quarantine learning how to read tarot. Welcome back to the podcast, Jamie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Besides like boiling hot on this gorgeous San Francisco day, I can't believe how warm it is out there.
I know. I kind of love it. I'm really excited to go to the park this weekend.
It feels really good. And you're right. I think it's going to last through the weekend, isn't it?
Yep. I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah. We have to take advantage of that for sure here. Okay. What was learning tarot like?
It was cool. It was like this really intensive, like 9-month program that when I first moved to San Francisco, it was like the height of COVID restrictions. Like California had just lifted their like 2-week required quarantine for people coming into the state. And I was like, how am I going to meet people? Like, how am I going to fill my time? And thankfully I found this local tarot class that took up, was a good way to meet people and kind of fill up the last bits of lockdown.
Yeah. And are you using your new skill?
Yeah, I use it all the time. I, do it for friends and family. I've dabbled with the idea of setting up a website and like taking appointments and stuff, but mostly it's just sort of like an outlet for myself. Like when things get crazy and I'm like, I do it for my productions all the time.
That's pretty funny. I would love that. Yeah, that's really cool. I've never heard that. So, and it took you 9 months, huh?
Yeah, it was like one weekend every month and then like, homework in between.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's very cool. Well, one thing I like to talk about and start the podcast introducing everyone to you is talking a little bit about your background. So I know you probably did the same thing in the previous podcast, but if you could just quickly tell us kind of how you found art production and then maybe what it was that brought you to San Francisco, or how did you know you wanted to leave Chicago?
Yeah, sure. So I have a background in still photography. That's actually what my bachelor's degree is in. I have a bachelor's in fine arts in photography. And then after college, I started working in New York for different photo agencies doing, being an agent as well as working in like line production and marketing and stuff like that. And then I wanted to make a change. It just was, time to mix it up. So I got the opportunity to go client side and work for the agency, which I thought would be like a really fun experience. And I totally loved it. And I've been doing it ever since. I had a really great time in Chicago. I think I just kind of got cold.
Wait, where did you grow up?
New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, so not like it's not warm there, but like it's not as cold as Chicago winters.
Yeah, those winters are pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Well, and here you have moved to the Mission in San Francisco. If you're going to choose the warmest place to be in our city, that's it. So
I know. I've turned into such a weather wimp too. I have another friend that moved with me from Chicago around the same time. And now we go outside and we're like, oh, it's 60 degrees. It's freezing. Bring your coat.
Yeah, I always feel like people who move from cold locations to come here think it's, amazing. And then you stay here for a little while and you, as that starts to happen, you start to become such a wimp. So, okay. So tell me a little bit about what you're known for on your team.
Yeah, I'm kind of known for the things I guess that are more like puzzles, like that make people kind of go like, whoa, that's a lot of moving pieces. Or, whoa, I don't know how to do that, is usually what people come to me for. Like, for example, I recently worked on a project where we had to, we were using 3M painter's tapes and we were trying to utilize utilize that by making a mural and recording the mural making process. And everybody was kind of like, well, how do we do that? And get the director and the artist to get along. And I was like, I'll figure it out. And it ended up working out really well. So I was really excited about that one.
It's so interesting. I've had a couple of things recently where there are muralists involved.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, it's really cool. And it's been fun looking for, I mean, I'm not doing the looking for, but I'm paying attention to the process. Finding the people to do it. Then, marrying that with the photography needs and kind of watching those two artists collaborate has been really cool.
Yeah, it was really awesome. It was like a really great way. We also had a stills photographer on set. So it was a really great way to kind of combine a lot of the different mediums that I'm used to working in into one project, which was a lot of fun.
That's great. Well, tell me a little bit about your role as an integrated art producer. Maybe you can kind of define what that looks like and tell us a little bit about your typical day and the type of projects that come across your desk.
I mean, the typical is that there is no typical, which is, I think, one of the things that really keeps me going in this industry is that, like, you could have the same client, but, we're working on project A, and that's, something that have moving and something that I'm comfortable with. And, like, I've got the deal going down, and then they've got something coming completely out of left field that, is just completely unexpected. So it's a little hard to describe because right now, like, I'm working on a really cool CG out of home project, but I'm also talking to somebody about making an Alexa skill. It's really just sort of like dependent on wherever the creative's brains go. And people come to me and say, is this possible? And I'm like, I don't know, I'll figure it out.
I remember when art buyers were turning into art producers who are now integrated producers. And there was, change and transition and stuff is never easy. And it was kind of an exciting place to be or to watch because I saw all these art buyers that I knew getting really excited about their job and learning all these new skills and recognizing the skills that transferred over from just when it was regular art buying to, like you said, like solving these puzzles. And every day is so different and it's pretty cool. I mean, it sounds like you like what you do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think in making sort of the shift, it's become really interesting to see how all of these different realms kind of compare to each other. Like how, finding a director compares to finding, how I'm used to finding a photographer, and how finding experiential vendors differs from finding photographers and directors. Like everything it's the same, but it's slightly different. And I think that's really interesting.
And what would you say is the most challenging aspect of your job?
I think the most challenging is the pressure to get as much bang for the client's buck, which a lot of times will end up meaning, having to explore every element of the project that you're working on to kind of squeeze out different content. Like, how can we take this photo shoot and make it social friendly since we have all of these resources available? Which is one of those things that a lot of times I ask the question up front, and then, 2 weeks before the shoot, somebody changes their mind and they're like, never mind, we want to get that.
That happens all the time, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what are your clients asking of you right now? Are they, and are they hesitant to produce things, or are they, they're not as afraid about in terms of COVID and stuff? Or maybe the economy now could be what's scaring them. I'm not sure, but what's your experience?
I mean, I haven't, most of my clients have been pretty excited to start producing. Everything that I've done since I've been at Venables has been in person, which has been really cool.
That's great.
I think the only difference is that when it comes to something smaller, the clients are more likely to want, now that we know that, zooming in or, patching into a shoot is possible. They look to do that a little bit more, sometimes try and add more people than would typically be on a shoot to that call, which is an experience. But for the most part, I think we're pretty much kind of up and running the way that things were pre-COVID, which is great.
And how do your remote shoots work, right? Like, I hear a lot of people talk about the idea of having, multiple channels in which you're communicating, and how the art producer is a bit of an air traffic controller.
Yep, that's totally
Is that right?
it. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like interesting that you phrase it that way. I'm thinking back to a shoot that I had when I was still in Chicago, and we were able to all be together in person to stream the shoot with the client at a separate location. And it was like everybody was funneling feedback in through different methods, and it was all coming to me, and it was like me trying to consolidate everything into text message to our producer on the ground. And it was exactly like that.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
really
got to
good
be hard. And you know how many times you text somebody you didn't mean to text and you put it in the wrong channel, or, you've got to keep all that stuff straight. So that
Oh
I
my
can
God,
see
totally.
that would be a lot
Yeah.
of pressure.
Yeah. And I think I think for remote shoots, it's one of the times that I think I've found really great partnerships with other producers just to have an extra set of hands on the day of. I've been very fortunate in that respect,
Oh,
just to
that's
have
great.
somebody kind of help me manage all of that and make sure that I'm not going crazy.
Yeah. Okay, how about your shoots that you are having? Are you finding that most of them are motion and stills, or are they mostly just motion or mostly just stills?
I would say it's probably 80% motion and stills and 20% just stills. It depends on the client. For example, Reebok was stills only. That's just sort of what their market needs. They have more of a need for point of sale pieces and stuff like that, where video would just be for social or something. Less of a hot ticket. You can make a social asset out of a still asset for sure. So yeah, I'd say 80/20.
Yeah, it's interesting. So much of our productions are now we're being asked to add motion to it. Sometimes it falls off. Sometimes a lot of times it stays, or maybe we're being asked to follow a motion production, kind of back a shoot. So it's unusual when it's not part of the shoot.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what it's like when you're kind of choosing the artist, and finding that artist ahead of time. So, do the creatives come to you and tell you what they're looking for, or do they bring you the artist and then you do the research on that? What is it like with your team?
It varies from team to team, and it depends on the situation. Sometimes the team will come to me with specific people that they worked with previously that they'd like to bring on, or they'll say, "Hey, I like this person. Can we get somebody in their vibe? Because I know that this person is out of our budget." A lot of times I find what's interesting is that they'll come to me with, especially when it comes to a lifestyle shoot, they'll come to me with examples from an actual documentary. And they'll come to me and be like, "I know this is like, you can't stage this because it's a real thing, but how close can we get to it?" I think is one of my more common asks.
Mm-hmm. And then, so when you kind of curate a list for them to review, are you sending them links at that point?
Yeah, usually my first step is to kind of go through all of my 50 million bookmarks, and pull, a decent sized list. And for them to, they'll say like, "This is in the right direction, but it's not quite right." And just sort of narrow it down, usually from a list of like 20 to 25 to like 5 people. And then we kind of take it from there, in terms of narrowing it down. Like, we'll get feedback from other members of the team. We'll check availabilities. And usually, kind of by the time it filters through and it comes time to our pre-pro or pre-bid meeting, we've got it down to 3 people.
Okay, so you've said so much there that I don't know. I'm thinking about which direction I want to take this in right now. All right, let's just kind of talk about like the pre-bid and the estimating, and I might want to come back to kind of the marketing and how you find the people to kind of put on your bookmarks. But from like an estimating place, right? You've narrowed down your talent. You've got maybe 3 people that you want to estimate. I'm assuming you have to triple bid your projects. And then the first thing you're going to have is the creative call. How important? I mean, I guess that's not a good question, because we all know the creative call is really important. I guess my question to you is, what advice do you have for people about the creative calls? Like, what are the obvious things that people get wrong on those?
I think one thing, I don't know, I mean, there isn't one specific thing, but one thing I do tend to pick up on is when people ask a lot of questions. I always really appreciate that. I think that it kind of gives, like, a lot of times there are stones that the creatives, when they make their deck, there are stones that are left unturned. And just being, as inquisitive as possible, I think shows somebody being proactive, as well as I think it just gives a really great opportunity for the photographer and the creatives to start bouncing ideas off of each other, which can be kind of like a good vibe check, which a lot of times is really important when it comes to the final creative recommendation on who we shoot with.
That is so important. I mean, I sit on so many calls now that I didn't used to ever have to sit on. And especially with Zoom, right, where you can kind of see everybody's reactions and, whether or not they're connecting. And everybody's style is very different, but it are the calls where there is a true connection. They rise to the top. Those artists rise to the top for sure, and they usually end up getting the job.
Yeah, and it's always really great to not only see somebody's creative wheels turning, but also know that they're just thinking about things very, in a very complete manner. It kind of makes us all feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. So then I'm sure you ask for treatments, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And do you share those treatments with your clients?
Yeah. Usually what we'll end up doing is it depends on the treatment. I know some people go very ham on them, and I think it depends. It's always appreciated from the creatives for sure. But some clients, we just you get to know your clients very well, and we'll be like, oh, if we share this whole thing, it'll be overwhelming for them. Let's sort of top line it a bit. So what we'll do usually is kind of share the highlights with the client, and then we'll share the highlights with the client, and then give the rest of the treatments in an appendix to the deck, so that the client has the option to review them if they want.
Okay, that's interesting. I love hearing you say that you kind of take the top line or a bit of a summary, because I encourage all my artists when they're creating their treatments to include a summary, because you just never know what part of the treatment is going to be shared with the client. Some people, like you said, share all of it. Some people only, share part of it. And if there is going to be a summary, I'd love for my artist to be in control of what that summary is saying, right? What are the key points for that particular artist? And I hear back from people often that, oh, thank you for putting that summary in. That was really helpful. That's what we showed the client, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think it's also, the first time usually that the client ends up interacting with the photographer is during the pre-pro meeting. And I think it's a good opportunity to show the client the personality that they don't get to see on the creative calls.
Yeah, I know. I had this conversation with a photographer the other day that, there's so much process that goes into getting a job now. It's not nearly as simple as it used to be. So I don't want to add process by suggesting this. However, the one thing that we feel like is missing in the process is we would love to have a moment to engage with the client, right? Well, of course, you're not going to probably connect us with the client, but in our fantasy world, it would be really wonderful if we had a chance to shine in front of them and let them see our personality and feel our energy and get us to be able to present our work to them. We feel like that's kind of the missing link, but it's not likely to happen. But
yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I'm curious as to where that would even come in the process.
Well,
yeah, and a chance for somebody to say hi to the client after they get the job to instill a bit of confidence or something.
Yeah, it would be kind of cool. But again, I don't want to add process to an already really complicated process. So.
Yeah, right. But it's interesting. It gives me something to think about for sure.
Totally. So do you get budgets from your clients?
Usually, yes. It depends. Sometimes I get a budget, but it's very mushy in that it's we're all kind of building the plane together to figure out what gets allocated where, is usually why I'm a little
yeah, that does make it hard. You might have a big number and you have to, share.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't exactly all know what portion ours is.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get, time frames tend to be very quick. So sometimes we're just all trying to figure it out together, and who can give something up and who can share resources and stuff like that. So it's a complex build, I think, a lot of the time, but I always push for, like, my favorite job is always going to be the one where they say, here's what we have.
Ours too.
I wish
I'd
it
like to
happened.
get you the best possible project for that amount of money, and it just saves us a lot of back and forth.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So no, those are my favorite jobs too. How about usage? When does that come up in the conversation with you? When do you talk to your
Usually,
client about
usually as soon as possible, just to set clear expectations. Um, I always like to get in on the ground floor as soon as possible on a project, like even when the creatives are still concepting, so that I can look at it and get an idea for what sort of usage would be reasonable for the amount that they're asking, and to stay within, like, if you ask a client, they're always going to say, well, let's get it unlimited use in perpetuity. And I'm like, you can't afford that. That's all, but that's always what they're going to say. So I think I like to get in early so that while we're sharing creative ideas, I can tell clients, like, this is what I'm thinking for usage. So you have some time to think it over. Because I don't want to walk into a bid situation and just be like, I don't know the usage yet. That's not helpful.
Thank you. How about production consultants or cost consultants? Do you work with either of those?
Yep.
Do you have any tips for people listening who might be new to working with a cost consultant, and, to explain to them how you can best work with them?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I find most helpful is that a cost consultant, at the end of the day, like, part of it, obviously a lot of them do want the best for the shoot, and they do have, their heads in the right places for the most part. But at the end of the day, their job is to get things to be affordable. And I never want people to feel pressured to slash in a place that they think will be detrimental to the project. I always really appreciate it when I send, like, a list of questions from the cost consultant, and somebody will be like, okay, well, I'm kind of iffy on this. And, like, I'm always happy to go back to them and share the point of view directly from the bidding team of, like, here's why I'm kind of iffy on that. And here's, where we might sort of lose value if we get rid of this line item or reduce this line item. I'm always happy to defend something that somebody feels like will make a difference.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, in all my years of experiences, having worked with cost consultants and even art producers who push back on certain line items, I do think it's really important to maintain the integrity of your bid. And if you feel like, from a production point of view, it's going to hurt the production, you shouldn't cut it, and you should stand up for it. And if you don't get the job because of it, that's a bummer. But it wouldn't have been the job that you wanted it to be. And, you could have dodged a bullet because of it.
Yeah, totally. And I remember getting the list of questions from cost consultants when I was repping, and it just feeling like you want the job so badly, but, it's a hard balance to strike. And I think, one of my goals in making the jump is to make sure that, I remember what it's like being on the other side. And, like, I hope that people can come to me and speak candidly, because I'm always happy to advocate for the artist.
I love that you were on the other side. How about production markup? Or administrative fees? Everybody's kind of calling them something different. Are you seeing more of that on your estimates?
Yeah, not all of them, but a good amount. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's showing up more and more. And I think, the producers and the reps, there's more, legal issues and prep needs and COVID and liability. And I think everything's becoming a bit more complicated. And, especially the cash flow issues, clients that are paying agencies in longer time. So we're getting paid in longer time frames. So you have multiple productions that you're banking, and it all adds up.
Yeah.
How about firm bids? Are you guys seeing firm bids at all?
Yeah, I think it's been actually a minute since I've done cost plus, just out of just random coincidences. But yeah, I think a pretty decent amount, especially if I'm looking at something with markup, it's probably going to be firm bid.
Well, and I find the other really amazing thing about firm bids is that we can send you an invoice the day of the shoot. So if you have a client that takes a long time to pay you and then we're waiting to be paid, it cuts that down by, 20 days sometimes it could take to put together a full backup invoice. So yeah, we're really appreciative of whenever we can do that. So thank you in advance. Let's go back to your bookmarks and the selection process and finding talent. Obviously, we're not having too many portfolio shows right now, but where do you find talent?
All sorts of places. I like to browse just sort of what's out there. I always keep an eye out for, what my friends are doing. I find LinkedIn to be very helpful in that a lot of people are posting their most recent shoots there. And I'm like, oh, that's dope. Let me save their vendors. I feel like I've gotten a big cutback on the amount of email promos that I've gotten. I don't know if it's like changing jobs during COVID or what, but I've noticed that that's been, or if like maybe it's like people are afraid of overwhelming us since we're all virtual now. But I have noticed a huge reduction in the amount of email promos that I've gotten. So just to kind of make sure that I'm staying on top of things, I try and make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to make sure I see what's out there.
That is interesting that you said that. I bet a part of it is because you switched jobs and people have updated your email address in their databases. Because I hear a lot of people say, "Oh my God, I get so many emails, and it's so hard to kind of sift through them." So that's great. Good for you. How about portfolio reviews, like PhotoWorks and Workbook and LeBook? Do you attend those at all or volunteer to review during those?
Yeah, if I can. Unfortunately, a lot of times, like just sort of things never work out for me, and that like I'm pulled away on production or something whenever I
feel the same way. I always want to say yes, and then I'm like, oh, I end up having to cancel. So it's like I don't even want to say yes anymore.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I just never know what's going to happen, but if I can, I will for sure.
And I saw you at LeBook. How did that feel?
It was nice to be back in a room with everybody. It was weird. It was almost like my brain couldn't process this. I was like, this shouldn't be happening. But
I've done a few LeBooks since we've kind of opened up for COVID, and they're not nearly as busy as the original LeBooks were before COVID. Of course, nothing is. But I've really appreciated that they weren't like that, because the same thing happens for me. It gets so overwhelming and there's so much happening, and the multitasking of a day like that, talking to someone, showing portfolios, sharing work, giving out promos. It's so much, but it feels so good. It felt so good to be there and be back and like have face-to-face conversations with people about work, which, was not over Zoom. So I liked that a lot.
Yeah, it was really great catching up with people. And I know that there were a couple of people that have kind of moved around since I had last spoken to them. And I think, in general, it was just really great to let folks know that I was in San Francisco, because everybody was kind of looking at me like, I know you, but not from here.
Well, what about portfolio presentations? Are you doing anything like that at Venables, or is there nobody in the office to even see it? So it's kind of doesn't make sense to do them.
We are in the office on a volunteer basis. So it's usually, there's usually very rarely more than 5 people in there at a time. Because, we're a smaller agency. Every once in a while, we'll still get requests for Zoom presentations. And if, the timing feels right, we'll try and set those up.
And do creatives come to those? Or do you feel like, with Zoom fatigue, they're just kind of not really showing up for it?
I think I have a couple of people that are, they're always interested and hungry to learn. And I know that the more senior creatives they're always encouraging the juniors to go. I think what makes it a little bit trickier is that now, just to be perfectly honest with you, people aren't getting fed.
Yeah.
So
I know, I agree.
It's harder for people to carve time out of their day.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end of the day, it just sort of it ends up being an optional meeting on their calendar.
Yep.
Yeah, I think honestly, it kind of boils down to food.
I'm not surprised because those cupcakes or the burritos or whatever it is that we would bring, the beer and the wine and the cheese, was like a huge reason to get up and move away from your desk and come to the conference room.
Yeah, yeah. And that was the other thing too, was that it got you away from your desk. You walked away with promos that you could decorate with or save or do whatever you want with. And you don't have that tangible thing anymore.
Have you seen any unique Zoom presentations, or are they all kind of the same?
I think the ones that I appreciate the most, I think it's a really great opportunity for the artists to actually show up, because I know sometimes, it would just be whoever's in town. But I think it's a really great opportunity for people to do almost like mini presentations, which are kind of my favorite. Because I always it's really great to see work, but I think what I enjoy most, or what makes them most engaging, so that it's not just somebody clicking through a slideshow of their work, is getting to hear the backstory of the project. Those are my favorite.
Those are pretty cool. I like that too. One of my photographers, because they all have such great stories to tell, and they don't have to tell the story of every single image, but just choose one project. And I feel like they're all such great storytellers.
Yeah. And I think it also kind of gets back to the whole vibe check kind of thing of I think the creatives are more likely to remember who they saw if they felt like they had a connection with that person, which I think is almost a flip side to everything, is kind of a benefit in that I always really enjoyed meeting photographers in person, but it can I can't invite all 50 of my creatives to come look at a single portfolio. Would be chaos.
No, that would be a lot.
Yeah. So they would miss that experience of getting to know a photographer. And I think that if somebody is able to jump on Zoom with a bunch of other people and make sort of a nice, concise presentation, it really kind of gives a chance to lock somebody in the creative's brain, which is really important to me, because I always tell them it's, the more you see what's out there, the more you can it opens your brain a little bit, and we can kind of push stuff.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, this was amazing. It was so great to talk to you again and just hear about what your world is like post-COVID and at Venables. But I still like to end with the same two questions I asked you before. It'd be interesting to see what your answers were the last time and what they compare to this time. But what is your favorite thing to do on a Sunday?
Honestly, just lay around. I really appreciate spending time working from home. I really appreciate being able to spend time in my house where it's just my house. But I can't do that all the time. So I'm trying to make sure to go to a point, to go to the park, to make sure that I'm exploring the city more. Because, I've only been here for a year. There's still tons to see. So
I know. What is some fun San Francisco thing that you are just oh my God, I absolutely live in San Francisco now that you saw it, was it Dolores Park or the bridge? When you saw them, were you just blown away?
It was 1,000% Dolores Park.
Yeah.
I text my friends photos of all of the sites that I see on a Saturday there. I'm this is what I like.
I lived near Dolores Park when I had little kids, and it was bizarre. And it was so much fun too to go there, but it's such a crazy place in the city.
Yeah, it's so unique. And I don't know, my favorite is that there's one guy that goes around and for $1, he'll make up a song about any topic that you want. I love him.
That's awesome. I need to meet him. Okay. And now if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
I was just having this conversation and I genuinely have no clue. I don't know. It would be cool to do something more full-time with my tarot kind of stuff. Maybe open a store.
Yeah. I was going to ask if that might be it.
Yeah.
I you up on, have to ask you to read my cards one day. I've never done it. So I think I'd love to have that done.
Oh yeah. You definitely need to try it at least once.
I always see those stores and you're oh, do I walk in? Do I not? I feel like I need a recommendation from somebody on whether or not it was a good one to go to or not. So
yeah, I can give you a basic one, but if you want something more in depth, I know some great people that are local.
Okay, well, we'll have to talk.
I'm still growing as a tarot reader.
That's funny. Well, it's very impressive and it was awesome to speak with you. And I really, really appreciate your time. And It's a Friday and it's like 80 degrees out there. So I hope you're headed out soon. But thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciated this.
Of course. Thank you.